The 1996 Constitution ushered in a different system of governance that became known as decentralization. A unitary decentralized state, Cameroon, was baptized to be. And between 1996 to date, a lot has been said, a lot has been questioned, a lot have been given out, and a lot have been pinpointed as to have been done as far as aiding and ensuring effectiveness of that system of governance is concerned. Yes, the government of Cameroon on the other side is stating that much needs to be done, but that they have done a lot to ensure that decentralization becomes better. In a much clearer sense, especially after the Grand Measure National Dialogue, it was baptized to accelerated decentralization with a giving in to special status by the government and ensuring that powers are given to the regional council and divisional council, and also ensuring that people are given the powers that they deserve in order to manage their local municipalities. Above all, with the emergence of the House of Chiefs, government is also making a position that many things are going to be done in the days ahead in order to accelerate or make decentralization effective. But political stakeholders are of different opinions that decentralization is not effective, despite government truncated song about effective decentralization. They are asking the question, how effective is effective decentralization? How effective is effective decentralization? On today's edition, we are going to attempt an answer to that. My name is Tah Mai Jarvis, and this is House of Commons. You're welcome back from that transition. If you are just joining us, you're watching House of Commons, and we are looking at how effective is effective decentralization. Here in the studio, we have Mr. Edmond, who is joining us for his very first time. Mr. Edmond, happy Sunday.
Tah Mai Jarvis, thanks for inviting me. It's my pleasure being here. And I will seize this opportunity to also welcome my co-panelists. And I want, as time will be unfolding, I want us to pinpoint and dwell on ideas that will live and not to dwell on ideas that will die. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming, and of course, a happy Sunday to you too. Mr. Nick, happy Sunday to you, and a privilege to be here.
Happy Sunday to you, Tah Mai Jarvis. Thank you for having me in your studio once more, and thank you also. Welcome to our fellow panelists also, who is here for the first time, and we look forward to having a fruitful discussion to contribute to nation building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All those of you watching us online, I want to say happy Sunday to you. Just to let you know that we had invited Prince Ejide Pierre from Yaoundé, who told us he was going to be here, and as of now he has difficulties being here today. Above all, we also had invited Barrister Ewule, who by some chance or by difficulties cannot be here today, but however he will be sending us his contribution as the program unfolds. To kickstart the program, I'll begin with you, Mr. Egmont. When we look at decentralization from 1996 to date, what is your opinion as far as that system of governance is concerned?
Thank you for that question. As far as my own opinion is concerned based on decentralization, Mr. Tama, you believe with me, we know the foundation of everything is the key. And from initial, the system of government from 1996, that the Constitution ensuring the decentralization system of government with the atmosphere and the type of the society and the state we found ourselves, we'll see that just from the idea from 1996 to date, 2022, almost about 26 years, and we're still talking about the issue of effective decentralization. You'll see that there are loopholes as far as decentralization is concerned in Cameroon. And you equally bear with me that with the system of decentralization that I have come across and I have studied, and the one in Cameroon talking about the unitary decentralization is to me like a point of oxymoron. And that oxymoron creates a lot of confusion. That explains why some of these stakeholders, the actors who are to effect this decentralization, many of them are still confused with the fact that some of them are still giving points that they are still learning their offices since from 1996 to date. So just to say that, since an efficiency can never be 100%, if not, we will say it is still at 0 point. Thank you.
Okay. When you say it's still at 0 point, you said you raised a pertinent issue that some of the officials see they are still getting to understand the functionality of their offices, because they say decentralization is a new concept. But we are counting 1996 to date, which is close to about 26 years. And do we learn offices in 26 years?
That is the point. That is the point. That is a cacophony in the whole issue. Because with the issue of decentralization, we African as a whole and Cameroon in particular will have this notion of copy and paste. Yes, I say copy and paste because if you see the idea of this decentralization, people, the current or the contemporary Cameroonians, they followed mostly the self-interests and not political ideology. That would take me back to the issue of when West Cameroon, at that time, or better call it British Southern Cameroon, when they came in the idea of the East Regional Crisis of 1953, when Indeli came out with the idea of the benevolent neutrality bloc, and they stayed away from Nigerian politics in 1953, they came in British Southern Cameroon in Manfé. They dissolved those pressure groups and they formed the first political party, the KNC. With the formation of that political party, the KNC, with the political ideology, immediate independence and reunification with French Cameroon. Now, you discover that many British Southern Cameroonians at that time, they were of what? The idea saw the interest of the masses. And from 1953 right up to 1955, when Indeli, who came out with the benevolent neutrality bloc, changed his stand and he talked of integration with Nigeria. And you see that those British Southern Cameroonians at that time, they did not hesitate because they were out for political ideology. Would they secede from that? And they formed the KNDP political party. Now, Mr. Tah Mai Jarvis, you will bear with me that many British Southern Cameroonians and Cameroon as a whole, they are still confused, I have rightly said. Because when we talk of decentralization, we have in political domain, we have in economic domain and fiscal domain.
And cultural
domain. Now, when we talk of this, many in Cameroon in 1996, the section 1 of the Constitution of 1996 stipulates that Cameroon is a unitary and decentralized state. With the idea of this unitary and decentralized state, you see that it is somehow paradoxical, because I will bear with even those, the stakeholders and the actors that are telling us that they are still like learning their office. Learning their office because they have not yet understood the context of the whole issue. So saying that it is effective, then it's still a far-fetching issue.
Thank you very much. Also, Nick, when we look at this decentralization itself, I'm sure we have talked about this, but we've not looked at it from the truncated manner of effectiveness as far as this is concerned. The Cameroon government states that, yes, there are some loopholes, as Mr. Edmond pointed out, but the government is saying that a lot has been done so far as decentralization is concerned.
I don't think that a lot has been done as far as decentralization is concerned, or the bone of contention in decentralization in Cameroon is the political will. The political will is not there. The government is not ready to devote its power to the local authorities. So it is just kind of much, to me, just kind of like a political scam that are trying to just scam people to give the impression that they are ready to decentralize. Because when you look at the laws of governing decentralization in Cameroon, there are a lot of loopholes in the law, there are a lot of contradictions in the law, and it's like when you look at the local authorities, it's like they are just like a subset in a much global state, a much stronger state, which is the state of Cameroon, who are like holding all the powers and don't want to give the powers to anybody. So they just kind of, since the powers like maybe like they are really hot in their hands and people are really fighting to take them, they just kind of create this atmosphere to say, we're ready to decentralize and give power to the local people who power really belong. And when you look at it critically, there's no political will on that. Because what you say, you talk of accelerated decentralization. You may be tempted to ask the question, who is on the accelerator? If you are a driver, and of course the driver is accelerates the car. And if the driver refuses to accelerate the car will never move. The passengers and the driver will be on the standpoint. And that's the kind of situation we are facing in Cameroon. The person responsible to accelerate the car, which is the governance and everything that entails with it, is not ready to accelerate the car. And so we are on the standstill, we're in the quagmire that we find ourselves in. The much sing song about decentralization to me is just like a choir. And at the end of the day, there's no effective decentralization in Cameroon. We all can bear the weakness. We can see the tentacles of the state being demonstrated in all aspects and every aspect of the local community and the rest. If decentralization can only be effective in Cameroon, the day we are not going to be seeing governors, we are not going to be seeing SDOs and senior divisional officers, or we are going to see them being elected. That's the day if decentralization will be effective in Cameroon.
Well, you say there is not much of effectiveness in decentralization, but the government will argue that if they look at what it is now, there is the House of Chiefs, there is the Regional Assembly and Divisional Assembly in Northwest and Southwest, which has the special status of Divisional Assembly, and that these people have the powers to vote their budget and determine how the organization of their localities will look like. As far as that is concerned, is that not also an aspect to say that, okay, this is decentralization?
It is decentralization just in theory. It is not really, practically, it is difficult to implement all of these things you are saying. You look at most of these, the regional councillors that were elected, it's almost more than a year now. You cannot really feel their presence. You cannot feel their presence. Regional and divisional councillors that were elected, you don't see them being, you don't see their actions on the field and the rest. And you cannot be telling me that that is a kind of the effective decentralization. Do they need to take 5, 10 years? And they have a limited mandate to run, and they spend 1 year doing nothing. You don't see anything they're doing. And at the end of the day, you will say that those are organs of decentralization. To me, it is just a joke.
Okay, we're coming back to you. Let's come back. Let's get to Barrister Ewule's first reaction before coming back to the studio.
Straight to the point, a question of what is my opinion about decentralization. If you look at the Black's Law Dictionary, the 9th edition, it defines decentralization as the transfer of power from the central government to the local government, and that is the meaning of decentralization, the transfer of power from the central government to the local government, that is the other governments that are down. And if you look at the way decentralization has been managed in our country, it is, you look at the 1996 Constitution, it talks of decentralization, transfer of power from the central body to the local government. And you know, if you look at that law on decentralization, it talks about some of the advantages of decentralization, and some of those advantages is what it leads to: an efficient management of government institutions, and it leads to an efficient management of state resources and efficient functioning of the state machinery. You know, because when there is over centralization, you will see that the local authorities, they don't really feel the activities of the central government, and so it caused a lot of it caused a break in the chain of management of state resources. And that is why most pundits and most government and most political experts have held that
Thank you very much. We'll be coming back to you, Barrister Iwule, and also Prince Edeje Epie, who is in Yaoundé. Let's come back to Mr. Edmond. We are looking at this now as far as the current socio-political atmosphere is concerned in the northwest and southwest region, where the government said within the 1966 constitution there was provision for a special status that has been given to accelerate this decentralization process. If you look at within the period in which this accelerated decentralization was put in place, from when the crisis started and after the government national dialogue with the giving of the special status, do we or can we say that, you know, there is that level of goodwill from the government perspective?
Mr. Tah Mai Jarvis, I must say that with all the ideas and the strategies that the government is using, is they have odd faith. I must say so. They have odd faith because just the fact that the government, with the current socio-political crisis in Northwest and Southwest, to me, even the issue of hosting even the AFCON, without settling that problem, it was a slap on the government face. Now, if British Saudi, I beg your pardon, if decentralization that we are saying here, and those local authority, with some of those fundums and those areas, they lack a lot of resources in order to effect this decentralization. So on the part of the government, if we should say we should restart some of those successes, I should be thinking maybe it's still in Yaoundé and Douala. But talking about especially the Northwest and Southwest is just still, I cannot pinpoint any.
But there's a special status now that was given to the Northwest, where they have a divisional assembly, regional assembly, and also they have some kind of consideration as far as managing their resources concerned.
Good. You are talking of special status. This special status came with resources or with finance to manage this decentralization. I don't know if they really define what we are talking about the special status, because based on my understanding, like I earlier said, that copying and pasting is a problem to us African and Cameroon in particular. Because when we talk of special status, look at, I should go back to the still, I like bringing reference from history. When Kwame Nkrumah came back from Ghana, he came out with the idea of conscientism. And in that conscientism, he conscientized the Ghanaians and many Africans that we should study the white man book, but we should not behave like them, because there are some elements that are vital that will take from them. Meaning that if we are talking about special status, we need to, first of all, we train people to understand how this special status of a thing is all about. Just telling this, the Southwest and Northwest that they have given special status, that many, they do not understand what special status is all about. Now, when you're bringing policies without they seeing the interests of the masses, know that it would backfire. It will be a serious problem, because all government policies, especially in Cameroon, that voids of the interests of the masses, which, talking about the special status, is to help to even confuse the Cameroonians the more.
Okay, you raised an issue that the government was supposed to educate the people about special status, what it is all about.
Actually,
but is it the role of the government? Don't these regions, Northwest and Southwest, have elites who were in the grand measure national dialogue, politicians who were in the grand measure national dialogue, who could go now to their individual constituency and educate the masses on the special status they had discussed at the grand measure national dialogue? Do we now need to blame the government as a whole? What of these elites who have the sole responsibility, civil society organizations, key stakeholders who were also at the measure national dialogue? Is it not them to do that, or is it the government that has to do this?
Thank you. You talk of the elites, Mr. Tah Mai Jarvis. You bear with me that some of these so-called elites in quotes, some of them with the idea, if you sit, you invite them here, and you ask them to explain this whole concept of special status. You marvel with the answers they will give you, because you have not even mastered the concept and going back to your constituency to educate people. How can you educate of which you don't even have the core of the whole issue? It's still a problem. And how many of these elites do go back to your constituency and create and promote even this education? So we see that it's still a problem in Cameroon.
Okay, he raised an issue that some of these policies that government is putting in place or intend to put in place in time to come, there should be an education so that the masses can understand what the policies are and how they are going to better their lives. A case in hand is the special status, which is a part of the measures put by the government to give decentralization and effectiveness, looking at the 1996 Constitution. But the question now we should ask is, he's blaming that education was not done, which is correct, because we've not seen an effective education on the field as far as special status is concerned, right to the grassroots level. But who then take the blame of not doing this education? Because we are aware that we have politicians, where we have elected members of parliament and also senators, we have mayors, we have political elite, and also civil society organizations. Who then need to educate the people? Is it now, should we be waiting for the president in your own days to come and educate the people?
Yeah, the problem is that the special status doesn't really have a container. I mean, it doesn't have a content. How will you be educating people without really understanding the content? What is the content of the special status? Apart from saying that the Northwest and Southwest will have an assembly, which the other regions don't have. What is really the special? What's special about the special status? Those are the questions we should be asking ourselves. How is the special status going to help solve the current crisis we are facing? It is not the elites cannot really go down and begin to tell, because they themselves don't understand what the content of that special status. To me, it was just a kind of camouflage the government was using just to calm down situations at the moment. We are really waiting. Maybe they will come up with a text of application of what the special status is really all about. The special status cannot be effective maybe in the Anglophone regions. Meanwhile, we still have the supervisory authorities, because when you look at the law, 2019 law on the General Code of Decentralization, it clearly states that you will look at Article 73, it's talking about supervisory authorities, the governors, the DOs, and the subdivision officer. They are still the supervisory authorities over these elected officials. Meaning that it is not still just different from the system we had. The right thing, the government is not really willing to give power to the local people. And giving power to the government has appointed independent conciliators in the Northwest and Southwest region, who are still answerable to the government. They are still answerable.
But that was the same thing with the federation now. We'll have the independent conciliator, who was a liaison officer between the central government and the federal government to ensure that all have the same policies of the government and is effective. Will you say that, okay, decentralization simply means that they should give these people powers with their independent conciliators to bridge the gap between the central system and, of course, the regional bodies?
The issue, the bone of contention there is that there's independent conciliator, right, who is supposed to be in between the government and the local authorities. There's also the supervisory authority, who is the governor, and the DOs in the divisional at the divisional level, the sub-DOs at the sub-divisional level, who still acts like the liaison between the government and these local authorities. So to me, it's just like a conflict of positions, a conflict of authority in this case. The best thing would be to, the bone of contention about decentralization in Cameroon is the form of the state. The form of the state cannot be, decentralization cannot take place in this kind of form of state. The form of state is still highly centralized. And the government, the central government still holds a lot of power. And they are not really ready to give these powers to the local people. It would have been better if the government is really willing, politically willing, to give power to the local people and then just manage certain aspect of the state.
Like, you have not answered my question. You have talked about the independent conciliator.
Yes.
And I've asked a question that, will you expect the government to just allow this, say, okay, yeah, you have the powers, do whatever I have to do, without appointing someone that will bridge the gap? Because even in the United States, where we have a federal structure, there are still some people who bridge the gap between the federals, the different states, and the central system in Washington to ensure that they both have a federal plan and a state plan.
My problem is not whether there should be a person. My problem is at the level of having the governor and then having the independent conciliator.
Okay. Your problem is that there's a conflict of position between the governor and the independent conciliator.
Yes, it would have been better
as well as the president of the regional assembly, who is the chief executive officer of that region.
Yeah, he's not a chief executive. The governor is a chief executive officer.
From the text, the regional council president is the chief executive officer of that region. Meaning that he controls the development of that region. He controls the structure, the cultural, the political, but he doesn't control the gendarmes and police who are under the governor.
That's the problem. The problem is that the governor is still the supervisory authority, meaning that the regional authorities are still under the governor. If you look at the text very well, the governor has, they cannot hold meetings without the presence or without the authorization of the governor. And you cannot call that decentralization. It means that their powers are limited. Of course, to me, the best thing would have been having an independent conciliator and then having the court, the law. The law would have been the best to be the judge. Not like the governor can sit and judge a situation and say, no, by his own power, he decide that this thing will not hold by his own power or by his own initiative. He says that this initiative, the president of the region may bring an idea, a developmental idea, and if the governor is not d'accord, that thing will not go through. Those are the problems.
Let's take on the second interjection of Barrister William Fokaminjo, Mr. Edmond.
Yes, we're talking about the assessment of decentralization to the economy of Cameroon. If you look at what experts have said about decentralization, talking about transfer of power to the local authorities like the councils, the regional body, the regional councils, the local councils, the various regional and divisional delegates and the rest. If you look at that very process, it has a lot to do with the economy because there is better efficiency in the management of state resources, and you see there are more actors in the whole process. It's different from the over-centralization of power in Yaoundé. So if you look at even the 1996 constitution, the state of Cameroon has not been able to really implement decentralization as it ought to have done. If you see how far they have gone, it was since 1996 that the issue of decentralization was part of our constitution, but it was not implemented till after the advent of the Anglophone crisis. That's when they started seeing how they could rush on it, and they came up with the regional council. They came up with a transfer of powers to the local councils. That has not still been done. They talk of special status. We are still to see what is happening. So if you look at the economy of Cameroon, most things are still being very centralized in Yaoundé. Most of the things are being centralized at the level of Yaoundé. And you see the
Mr. Edmond, do you agree with Barrister Ewule that the way decentralization is going, that yes, he acknowledged the fact that it's a good system that will really reduce the power of the central government, but that it has not fully been implemented as it ought to be? How?
Mr. Tah Mai Jarvis, this issue, yes, according to him, because based on my own political ideology, I have never cherished the idea of decentralization in Cameroon. Because you bear with me, when we talk about this decentralization issue, it is always good to apply it in developed country and not developing country. If we Cameroonians, we are sincere, if you look at those great empires in Africa, and those were on what? Dictatorship. At this developing country, especially Cameroon, we need good dictators. I am of the opinion of what? A federal state or will have what? A good dictator to run the affairs of Cameroon. When I talk of a good dictators here, I'm referring to those dictators like Paul Kagame. I'm talking of those dictators like Gaddafi. Good. Because with the idea of this system...
We cannot be advancing in democracy and we'll come back to dictatorship now.
The problem is, if we tried and it failed, since we are copying and we are trying. And why it did not fail in the past, you believe with me that one of the points that led to the start of the scramble of Africa was the presence of what? The empire, those great empires.
The Maji,
the Kande Bulum empires, the Mali empires. Good. It frightens the Europeans. And in most of those countries that they have what we can call them kingdoms and so on, you look at how development is being accelerated. You will believe with me that with the idea of bringing out political system that we cannot even lay emphasis and we follow them up to faster development. We are calling names because we are using points. We said centralized. It's from 1996. Now, I will believe with him that with the decentralization, there are some key factors that may, if we apply them well, it may facilitate the development of the country. But with the current regime, we are just playing around. Because if you look at from 1996, right, 26 years after, I was still talking about how effective is decentralization. Then there's a call for concern. Thank you.
How much impact now does the current state of decentralization, based on you say, is not effective?
Actually,
how much impact does it have on the economy?
That is why if powers are really decentralized, the local authority, and they have that infantry, they have the power to manage the resources. It is just like an indirect rule. It is just like an indirect system. The state must be there in order to regulate the affairs. But if we allow it and give them the upper hand to manage those resources, then there are some things that we can write home. But based on our contemporary or the current regime, I don't think decentralization can ever take Cameroon anywhere.
So the impact, it doesn't have an impact on the economy positively?
Well applied, it would have an impact. Well applied, it will have an impact in our economy. Good. But if we are still gambling, using words, why did they talk of centralized accelerate decentralization when the Anglophone crisis erupted, of which it was already in play. Many people thought that it's something new. If you ask them, talk about the idea of decentralization, they think it is current, of which it is not. How will you explain to me that after this, talk about accelerated decentralization, then we still give them those possibilities? Some of them, the actors, they talked of what? That their hands are still tied. They are still studying their offices. The computers send are still in French and so on. So you see, it's still a child's play.
Okay, Nick Anu, I want us to look at how much impact the current system now of decentralization is. You say from when we started the program that there's nothing effective about decentralization in Cameroon. So are you still going to say that the economic situation of the country cannot be improved with the current state of decentralization? How much impact does it have?
We cannot have an improved economic system when there's, first of all, no decentralization. We still see every decision coming from the central government. We still see major projects being decided from the central government and just implemented at the local level. The local actors don't really have what they say in most of those projects. So the effects of the economic effect of decentralization to me is just a negative. It's just a negative balance. There's no positivity about it. First, because the government is not really, they're not really willing to let go of this power. You know, the concept of decentralization in Cameroon was, to me, it was just kind of forced on the government of Cameroon. If we look at the 1996 constitution, it was born based on the 1990 crisis, political crisis in the country, that they saw the need maybe to decentralize the nation and in a way to solve maybe the Anglophone problem. At that time, that was still a baby problem at that time. So the 1996 constitution came into play, and they changed, they revised the Article 1 of 1972 Constitution, saying that Cameroon will be a decentralized unitary system. And going back to the year 2000, nothing about decentralization was being implemented, and the government of Cameroon, the debt of Cameroon was highly indebted from the year 2000 going forward, and the international community was like putting pressure on the government of Cameroon to implement decentralization, to implement it, and then they just kind of started preparing laws, and that's what led to laws on this. If you go to 2004, you saw that the first laws on decentralizations were enacted. That is the 2004 law on decentralization were enacted, defining the functionings of councils and city councils and the rest. Apart from that, the government has just like been playing games with the issue of decentralization. When you look at it, I like to look at every situation from a global level. When you look at you just read by the fact that the government is not really willing to implement decentralization, because if you are really willing to do something, you will not wait for 20-something years to do it. And that's what the government has waited. This current regime cannot implement decentralization in Cameroon. Maybe in the next regime that will come. We don't know.
When you said this current regime cannot implement decentralization, are you saying that nothing has been done by this current regime as far as decentralization is concerned?
Yeah, to me, nothing effective has been, something must have been done, yes. Maybe due to the evolving nature of the way. Of course, the way cannot be changing and you just remain on one position. And the government has international partners, and most of the conditions they give them maybe to obtain loans are that your country has to, your democratization process has to be at a certain level. And so they just kind of give a global picture that they are implementing these things. But our problem is on the ground level. We don't really see the effect of decentralization on the ground. If you look at this, first of all, the structural decentralization, it is a problem, because if you want to devolve power to the local government, to look at the local authorities, as they call them, you see that they are still performing the same role. They are still supposed, maybe here, we say supposed to perform the same role as the state is performing. They have roles on education, they have, and so on. To me, why not just put a system where at each region will be able to elect its officials that will be able to carry out all these functions that the state is doing, and then the state maybe appoint a supervisory authority who will see to how effective this thing is or how effective these functions are, and then report back to the state. Okay. And then the state, in that way, in voting the budget can be done at the regional level. There's a regional budget. Each region come out with its own budget and then go back to the central level. That's what will make decentralization to be effective. Because if you leave it to the level of ministers, that the ministers at his own will be able to give the powers or give some of the means that the local government or the local level need to function, to carry out their projects. They do it at their own discretion. And the law is not really binding on them. Even though the law says that they're not supposed to give it.
But from the 1996 Constitution, Mr. Edmond, there is a provision, I'm sure I'll check it out, there is a provision that the current system still remain in place until there is, a full transfer of power which will be done so that this system can take effect. That as of now, the current situation or the current system still remain in place. That's why probably we still have the DOs, the SDOs, and all these people still in place. That is a progressive. It's progressive.
And that is where the problem is. Yeah. Did they stipulate this period? It's vague.
Yeah, it's vague. Yeah.
It's vague.
Yeah. And it's contradictory.
Yes, and it's contradictory.
Because when you look at Article 72 of that 2019 law on decentralization, it says that the state shall through its representative exercise supervisory authority over local authorities by controlling legality. To me, that's a problem. The state shall provide support and advice for effective exercise of power, devout and ensure the balance of development on local authorities. So if you look at all of these things, when will the DO disappear? When they are supposed to be the supervisory authorities. So I think Cameroonians we should not dream that one day these things will disappear.
Working,
It's not working. The DOs will still always be there, as per this article, as per this section of the article.
Let's take on Barrister Ewule's another interjection, then we'll come back.
Most things are still being very centralized in Yaoundé. Most of the things are being centralized at the level of Yaoundé. And you see, there is no much implementation of the decentralization as the decentralization project. The head of government was in Boya in 2021 to assess the effectiveness of the decentralization process after the major national dialogue. And we told him in the meeting we had at NASLA, we told him that much has not still been done. Much has not still been done. And the Cameroonian public still needs much to be done. And that is why most people think that what is happening as far as the decentralization is concerned, the government is not ready. If you look at the action of the government is not ready to put in the decentralization, to transfer powers. Things are still being concentrated at the level of Yaoundé. Yaoundé still dictates the pace. If you look at secondary education, Yaoundé still dictates the pace. Ministry of Health is still the minister who dictates the pace. And you see in all the ministries, it is still Yaoundé that dictates the pace. So if you look at the economy, much has not still been.
Thank you very much, Barrister Ewule. That if we look at the economy, much has not still been done. I want to take on some few messages. This one which says, greetings House of Commons. There is nothing as such, especially in the Ministry of Finance. All taxes are being paid from various regions. All taxes being paid from various regions goes to one account, which is in Yaoundé, thereby making payment difficult. There is no decentralization as such. Like in Bamenda, the treasury they cannot pay an individual 5 million cash because they need to request payment from Yaoundé. Thank you very much. It's coming from an anonymous sender. This other one reads, it says, good afternoon and happy Sunday to you guys in the studio. Nice program. I want to say that effective decentralization is still found wanting in Cameroon. Yes, there is decentralization, but we still need a lot to be done. This other one reads, it says, I am John from Boya. I don't even understand the special status in the decentralization because I've just been hearing special status, special status. Can you guys please explain me what special status is there in the studio so that we can understand? Thank you very much, John. This other one reads, it says, happy Sunday to you guys in the studio. I think Cameroon government is on the track for decentralization. We just need to give them our support and ensure that they move on with the plan of decentralization, though it's slow but surely as government mechanism grind. This one which says, happy Sunday to you, great people in the studio, Mr. Jarvis. As per my opinion, the government is just playing with the brains of Cameroonians. If not all, most of all our intellectuals and lawyers had cried on the fact that the government is operating like a cabal that only work according to their own mindset and other opinions don't count. My question is such that is it the opinion of the regional assembly that shall begin to redirect policies in Cameroon? It's coming from NS from Dubai. Thank you very much, NS from Dubai. You wanted to react when I talked about the transfer of sovereignty, that is the gradual process?
Yes, when you talk of that, it is a gradual process. When we use this word gradual process, it's now to many Cameroonians it offends them. Because normally we know that the government itself, it did times to implement some policies. But it should not be as if they are using it in order to play on citizens. I still go back. I've said this decentralization is having the cloth of indirect rule. Yes, during indirect rule, we saw the condoms, the chiefs, they have native treasuries, they collect taxes, they give just a percentage to the supervisor, the British at the time, and part of that money, the income was used in those respective constituencies.
So if I get you correctly, that the decentralization process that has been put in place by Cameroon government is almost like the indirect rule system, actually, whereby people have the authority, local authorities have the powers to rule their people according to their culture, economic and political situation, and at the same time are accountable to the central government.
And that is
which is not a bad system.
That's why I've earlier said, if it is well implemented, that is the question on the issue. Good. But I'm of the opinion that if we want to accelerate sincerely the development of our country, then based on the contemporary regime with the decentralization, looking from the time frame from 1996 to present, then we need not a soothsayer to tell us that they are still gambling. I think we should think on another political system, because most Cameroonians now, they are out of interest, self-interest, and not the interest of the masses. I keep on repeating this. You discover that when Professor Maurice Kamto, when he came out with his political ideology, you saw many youth. You saw how many youth rally behind him. There are those, if you look presently, youths are out for political ideologies. But our parents, I call them parents because they are out for self-interest at the detriment of who? The youth. That explains why youths now, they fold their arms, what they have in their minds.
So if I get you correctly, it's not just the system, the issue of the ruling party, but it's general, the political class generally.
Obviously.
That both the opposition and the government or political key stakeholders don't have the interests of the people. To me,
a good example is Professor Maurice Kamto. When he was being arrested, he makes utterances that he can never come out from the prison until all the militants are being released. But today, I'm asking a question: if all those militants are being released, because he came out with a political ideology and the rally behind him, but where is him today? When we talk of SDF, Launched in 1999. That was the first. During the 1990.
That's
beg your pardon.
26.
Yes,
26
May 1990. With good political ideology. I've made a point here that by 1955, when Indeli changed his political ideology, they did not hesitate. Jumbo Foncha, Jua, Estimona, they did not hesitate because they are out for what? The political ideology and not the party itself. That is why they went further and they formed the KNDP. And we saw that the KNDP
advocating for independence
and reunification with French Cameroon.
The same ideology with the UPC.
With the UPC, which finally landed us to where we are today. And in 1961, when in the Formal Constitutional Conference, they came with what? A federal system of government, of which the British Southern Cameroonians, they were out for a loose federation. But finally, the loose federation was not there, and they succumbed to what? A centralized federation. Good. And if we see it, like we said in Cameroon, it's just what? Processes upon processes. The problem of this issue of decentralization, we call good names, we copy good names, but to execute them, that is where we are failing.
So if you said you are a federalist and you believe that a federation can still best give this structure. But what then is the difference between the decentralization that you say if it is well implemented will be very good for Cameroon, and the federation that you're talking about, what then is the difference? Is it not just a change of appellation?
The change of appellation and appellation itself is helping to confuse the Cameroonians. The Cameroonians have been used to with federation. They have been used to with federation. They understand federation too well.
They both have the same, almost like the same function.
They have similar characteristics. But with federation, and if it is enshrined and allowed, as we saw in 1961 with the two-state federation, but just that people at the time, they had inadequate knowledge. So with Ahiju, he wanted to centralize power. In 1966, we saw him dissolving all the political parties. So to me, if we still go back to federalism, it will make us go.
My question now to you is, what then is that difference between this federalism and decentralization? If decentralization is well implemented based on what you said.
Good. With federalism, it's almost asked. They have the states have little.
The same with decentralization.
No, with decentralization, the states have a lot of influence in local government and so on. But with federalism, the state itself have little power, little influence as far as the managing of the resources and is concerned.
Thank you very much. We take on an interjection from Barrister William before we continue the program.
Looking at the current crisis,
We want us to look at the current crisis and the impact of this decentralization, Barrister William.
Looking at the current crisis, can we say?
While our technical team is working on that, I'll come back to you. Can we, of course, say that Cameroonians themselves need to also give decentralization a chance now, so that it can also move in progress, and let's see how it goes.
Cameroonians have given decentralization a chance for 26 years, or 25 going to 26 years, and there's nothing to show for it. Do we need to wait for another 26 years or another 50 years to make decentralization to work? No, I don't think so. The problem with Cameroon now is that we need to try a different political system and see. As he was saying, implementing federalism will be the best panacea for Cameroon, not decentralization. Decentralization has shown its shortcomings, and of course, even though it has not even been implemented, and if you look at the way the government is doing it, is like there are two ways of communication. There's verbal and non-verbal communication. If you look at the non-verbal communication of the government, they are not willing to implement decentralization.
I say
Yeah,
not willing to. Don't we see the willingness in all the structures?
Yeah.
We have Ministry of Decentralization, we have the National School of Administration and local authorities, that's in San and Boya, that trains council officers. Oh, we have the regional assembly, regional divisional assembly. We also have the independent conciliator. Then you say the government not willing.
That's the verbal communication. My problem is that what impact do all of these people have? What impact does all of these appellations, what impact have they brought? That is our interest. What impact has it brought to the common man? That is what we are looking for, not the big words they are using to confuse us. Because to me, I'm not seeing any impact on decentralization. They are still the same actors who were there 26 years ago. They are still the ones who implement decentralization. And if they have not done it for all these years, it is not now that they will do it. The government of Cameroon is very good at giving slogans. Slogans that do not back action. And if you look at it, it is because they don't really have the interest of the common man at heart. Because if leadership is just all about having, once you have the interest of the common man at heart, you'll be able to do things without you being constrained to do them. Okay. Yeah, in Cameroon it is not the case. If you look at, let me just go back to maybe the Greek concept of the human being, of the Greeks, they had this concept of like, there are three people on earth, three categories of people on earth. And all of that still applies up to today. You had what they used to call the idiots, the tribesmen, and the citizens. Yeah, studies have shown that just about 90% of Africans, or the population of African, are composed of the idiots and the tribesmen. What are their characteristics of these different categories of people? The first category of people, you have the idiots. The idiots are a category of people who don't care. They don't care about anything. Meaning that if you put them in office, they steal money. If you put them, if they write exam, they cheat. If you put them, if they don't care about the environment, if they pee on the road, if they eat, they throw dirt on the road. These are categories of people the Greek used to refer as the idiot. Not like a kind of silly words to describe those people. And if you look at the second category of people, they call the tribesmen. The tribesmen look at you, they judge from the angle of their tribe. If you are not from their tribe, they don't recognize you, whether you are good and as what. If you are not from their tribe, they don't, anything good coming from you, they don't consider it. They judge you from the angle of their tribe. And then the last category of people, you have the citizens. The citizens are people who are ready to do things the right way, who are ready to bring in policies so that the government can, so that the people who are ready to fight for the general interest of others. And the worst thing is that if you elect somebody who is a tribesman to be a leader of a country, that country will be in a shambles. If you look across Africa, we have a lot of leaders who are tribesmen, and they do things from the angle of their tribe. And if you look at Cameroon in particular, a lot of government functionaries they function based on this angle of the tribesmen. Okay. They are not really citizens. And they can only become citizens by reformation, by law, and so on and so forth. Okay. So these are the problems that is plaguing Cameroon, these categories of people. The Cameroon nation is full of the idiots and the tribesmen. And Cameroon cannot really move forward. If you look at their political mentality, the state of Cameroon is almost a tribal state. If not a tribal state, if it is almost a tribal state. And so it is. No.
We take a step back. That is not a tribal state.
Of course, yeah.
It's not.
Of course, we can say it is not a tribal state, but it is almost. It is having the character of a tribal state.
Not a tribal state.
Yeah,
because we have Mr. Paul Atanganji, who is an Anglophone. We have Dr. Nalova Lyonga, we have Chief Dr. Joseph John Gute, we have people who have been working, who have been working in Bamenda for the past 40-50 years, who are from the other regions of Cameroon. We have people who have been working in Yaoundé too for the past 40-50 years, who are from other regions of Cameroon.
We are not saying that it is completely a tribal state. We are saying that its characteristic and its functionality. Yeah, it looks like it is.
But it is not. Let's get to Mr.
that first of all, the government is not ready, as I said, to really put the decentralization process in the way it is supposed to be. I was privileged to attend the 11th of February celebration in Boya, the 56th Youth Day celebration in Boya. And if you look at the organigram of the state, you will see that if you look at the program, the arrival of personalities, you will see that they say the arrival of the president of the regional house, you have arrival of the vice chancellor of the University of Boya, before you have arrival of the governor of the Southwest region. The question that I started asking myself is, are they trying to tell us that in the organigram of the region, in the protocol of the region, the vice chancellor comes before the president of the regional house? This is a question because it shows that the president of the regional house came, waited for the vice chancellor to come before we have the governor of the Southwest who came with motor rates and the rest. Our regional president does not have all of those privileges. So you see that they are not ready. Even looking at the mountain race of hope, I was there yesterday, you could not see the place of the regional president. So you see that they are not ready to implement the decentralization process. Everything is still very much centralized in Yaoundé. You look at even the special statute, what have they done as far as the Southwest and Northwest is concerned? Not much has been done. The special statutes, many people say, and I concur with them, that the special statute is like a smoke screen. It's like a smoke screen. It's like a smoke screen. So if you look at it,
I thank you very much, Barrister Wille. We are almost out of time. Edmond, your last word before we go.
Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. My last word is that we Cameroonians, nobody will build this nation for us. I call upon all the youth that we must come on board. We must support ideas that will live and not ideas that will die. Because ideas that will live are justice. Ideas that will live are things that we must see when coming out with principles. We must look into it that there is interest of the masses in them, so that we'll forge ahead and we'll have a better Cameroon. Thank you.
Your last word before we go, Nick.
Yeah, my last word is that we just need to keep hoping that maybe in the next regime, we're waiting that maybe the year this regime will pass away, because no system can stay forever. We can hope that maybe Cameroon will be better, Cameroon will be decentralized for the benefits of everybody. Because for the past 40 years, this regime has run the affairs of the state, not for the benefits of the common man, but for the benefits of a clique of people. Because they are not, you cannot say that it is the benefits of a particular section of the country even. It is just a clique of people who have taken upon themselves to hold the nation hostage and then hold the resources of the nation hostage, so that they cannot allow it to go down to the local level and enhance economic development in those local levels.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. In case you want to be a member of our panel, you want to participate on our discussion on House of Commons, you can contact me on the numbers that are on your screen. I will also invite you to be part of the program and also part of our WhatsApp chat, where we engage in debate as far as House of Commons is concerned. This program comes to you every Sunday at exactly 12 to 1:30. Rebroadcast is on Sunday, 10 p.m. and also on Monday at 9:30 p.m. You have the rebroadcast. Until we meet again, what matters is your matter. My name is Tah Mai Jarvis from Cameroon's economic capital, Douala, Fengudrong, Bangui.